Chicago, late afternoon. The wind was sharp enough to cut through layers of cheap fabric, rattling the rusted signs along the cracked sidewalks of South Side. The air smelled of snow and diesel, a reminder that the city could be both breathtaking and brutal in the same breath. Amara Johnson clutched a paper bag of groceries close to her chest as she turned onto 63rd Street. Her fingers were numb, but her thoughts were on the overdue rent notice stuffed in her coat pocket. 2 jobs, still not enough. Mama's medication, another bill coming tomorrow. The math of survival had stopped adding up months ago. "Hey, stop that man," a woman screamed. Amara spun around. A man in a gray hoodie sprinted past her, clutching a purse. Behind him, an older woman stumbled, calling for help. Without thinking, Amara dropped her bag. Apples rolled into the gutter and ran. "Stop, thief." The man was faster, his shoes slapping against the pavement. Amara grabbed the first thing her hands found, a chunk of broken concrete from the edge of the street, and threw it with all the strength of someone who'd had enough of being powerless. The sound that followed wasn't what she expected. A crash, high and sharp, like ice shattering in a glass. The thief disappeared into an alley, and in front of her, a sleek black sports car had just stopped at the intersection, its passenger side window now a spiderweb of fractured glass. Amara froze. Oh no. The car door opened slowly, deliberately. A man stepped out, tall, wrapped in a dark wool coat that looked like it had never known dust. His hair was silver blonde, not from age, but from that impossible shade that some people were born with. His eyes were gray, cold, precise, calculating. He looked like someone who never raised his voice because he didn't have to. He looked like money. Old money. Dangerous money. "Did you do that?" His voice was calm, but it carried weight. Amara swallowed hard. There was a thief, he was. He glanced at the shattered glass, then back at her. "So your solution was to vandalize my car?" "No, I was trying to stop him." He took a slow step forward, the soles of his shoes quiet against the pavement. "You missed." Amara's heart thudded. "I'll pay for it." She blurted out, her breath fogging in the cold air. I didn't mean pay." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Do you have any idea how much this car costs?" She straightened, even as her pulse raced. "Not as much as my pride." For a split second, something flickered behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Then the steel returned. "Name," he said. "Amara Johnson. Address." "Why?" "So you can have me arrested." He didn't answer. He simply studied her. The torn gloves, the frayed coat sleeve, the defiance trembling on her lips. She looked like someone who had already lost too much to fear another loss. Finally, he said, "No, not arrested." She blinked. Then what? He slipped his hands into his coat pockets. "You'll work it off. 1 month. My housekeeper quit last week. You can replace her temporarily." Amara stared. "You can't be serious." "I rarely am," he said flatly. "But in this case, I am." Her voice shook. "I don't work for people like you." He tilted his head slightly. "People like me. You know what I mean. The kind who think the world is a chessboard." "And you?" he asked. "What piece are you, Miss Johnson?" "I'm not a piece," she said quietly. "I'm the hand that moves them." For the first time, a hint of a real smile ghosted across his face. Thin, reluctant, but there. "We'll see." He handed her a small black card. No name, no number, just an address in gold print. "Be there tomorrow. 7 a.m. Don't be late." And then he turned, got back into his car, and drove away. Amara stood in the cold street, her reflection fractured in the broken window he left behind. That night, she couldn't sleep. The city outside her window groaned with sirens and wind, but her mind replayed the sound of the shattering glass, again and again. Her mother's breathing was soft from the other room, labored, but steady. On the kitchen table lay a half-eaten sandwich and a stack of unpaid bills. Amara held the business card under the dim light of the lamp. What kind of man makes someone work off a broken window? And yet something about him, the way he didn't call the police, the way his eyes had softened for a second, kept her from tearing the card apart. "Don't do it," she whispered to herself, but she knew she would. Across town, in a glass tower overlooking the frozen river, Ethan Sterling sat in silence. His assistant had gone home hours ago. The office was a monument of order, every file aligned, every surface clean enough to see one's reflection. On the wall hung a single photograph, a little girl in a red coat, mid-laugh, her curls catching the sunlight. His niece, Lily. He pressed play on the car's dashcam footage, replaying the moment again. The woman in the cheap coat appeared breathless, fierce. He watched her swing that rock miss and then sprint toward the thief, actually tackle him before the video cut off. He rewound, slowed it down, watched again. She had thrown herself between the thief and a child wearing a red coat. His niece. He leaned back, stunned. His pulse tightened. So that was it. She hadn't been reckless. She'd been trying to protect someone she didn't even know. For a moment, the corner of his mouth lifted, a memory flashing through him. His sister's voice years ago. "Ethan, don't teach her to be afraid of the world. Teach her to look it in the eye." He poured himself a glass of whiskey and stared at the city lights below. "She threw a rock," he murmured half to himself. "And it hit me instead. Not the car. Him. Right where he thought nothing could." Morning crept into the city like a confession. Amara stood outside the Sterling mansion, staring at the gates that looked tall enough to keep out heaven itself. Her reflection wavered in the polished metal pail from the cold and nerves. She almost turned back. Almost. But the guard recognized her, or rather had been told to expect her. "Miss Johnson?" he asked. "Yes," she said quietly. "Mr. Sterling's expecting you." The gate slid open with a hum. The driveway was long-lined with perfectly trimmed hedges that seemed to whisper, "You don't belong here," with every gust of wind. At the end of it, the mansion loomed, all glass and angles, like it had been carved from light and arrogance. Amara tightened her scarf and forced herself to keep walking. Inside the house was silent, too silent. Her footsteps echoed on marble floors. The air smelled faintly of citrus and something colder, like metal and rain. Then he appeared at the top of the staircase dressed in black, his expression unreadable. "You're late," he said. "It's 7:05, she replied. "I said 7. I said, I'm not your maid," she shot back, but immediately regretted it. He didn't flinch. He almost seemed amused. "You'll learn," he said simply and turned away. As he walked off, she noticed for the first time a small framed photograph he passed on the wall. The little girl in the red coat again. The same child from the footage. A strange warmth flickered in her chest, though she didn't understand why. That evening, after she'd spent the day scrubbing floors that didn't need scrubbing and polishing glass that already gleamed, she stood outside the mansion, waiting for the bus home. The sky was bruised purple with dusk. From an upstairs window, Ethan watched her. His phone buzzed. A message from his sister Lily told me about the woman who saved her purse. "We still don't know who she is, but please find her. I want to thank her." He looked out again. The woman in the worn coat, the one who'd shattered his car and unknowingly, his armor. He didn't reply to the message. He only whispered to himself, "She's already here." That night, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that she'd stepped into something she couldn't yet name. She looked back at the mansion once more before the bus came, its tall glass walls glowing against the night like a lighthouse, beautiful, distant, unreachable. And somewhere inside that light, a man watched the replay of her face on his screen again and again. He didn't know what he wanted from her. Forgiveness, maybe. Or the truth about why her eyes looked like they'd seen too much pain and still chose kindness. What neither of them knew yet was that this small accident, this shattered pane of glass, was the beginning of something that would break them both open. Because some cracks aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to let the light in. The Sterling mansion looked like something out of another planet, glass walls, marble floors, and silence so polished it echoed. To Amara, it didn't feel like a home. It felt like a museum built for ghosts. Her first morning there was cold, both in weather and in welcome. The butler, a man who spoke like every word cost him effort, showed her around the spotless kitchen, the library no one read in, and the endless windows that caught light, but never warmth. Ethan didn't greet her. He simply watched from the upper hallway as she began her work, his reflection moving along the glass as she wiped each pane clean. Amara wasn't used to silence. She grew up in a house that hummed the radio playing soul music, her mother talking to neighbors' laughter spilling from the kitchen. Here, the quiet pressed against her ears like static. She filled it with humming, soft at first, then steadier, a tune her mother used to sing when life felt heavy. "Light only shines through the cracks," she murmured under her breath. From his study upstairs, Ethan heard it. That voice low, untrained, but rich, with something he hadn't felt in years, life. He closed the file he was reading, but didn't move. There was something about the sound that made the air in the house shift, just slightly, like someone had opened a window for the first time in a long time. At lunch, she sat by the kitchen counter eating the sandwich she'd brought from home. The cook offered to make her something better, but she declined. She didn't want to owe anyone anything in this house. When Ethan walked in, she stood up quickly, half expecting him to scold her for touching the counter. "You don't have to stand every time I enter," he said, not looking at her. "It's called respect," she replied. He gave her a sidelong glance. "Respect is earned." She met his gaze unflinching. "So is kindness." The words hung between them, two edges of a blade. Neither expected the other to hold. He left without responding. But for the rest of the afternoon, he couldn't stop hearing her voice in his head. Later that week, the city was drowning in rain. Amara worked alone, cleaning the tall windows overlooking the garden. The sky outside was bruised gray, and thunder cracked like a warning. As she polished the glass, her reflection wavered one side of her, in the present, the other flickering with memories she didn't want. She saw herself in that reflection, a girl who once believed life could be rewritten if she worked hard enough. Now she wasn't so sure. Her hands trembled. The rag slipped. A small vase on the nearby table toppled and shattered on the floor. Ethan appeared instantly, footsteps sharp against the marble. "What happened? I'll clean it." "I didn't ask that." His tone was clipped, but not cruel, more like someone afraid of breaking something else. "It's just a vase," she said, kneeling to gather the pieces. He crouched too, surprising her. "This was my mother's," he said quietly. The only thing she left when he stopped himself. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He stared at her hands, small, trembling, a bead of blood rising from where a shard had cut her skin. Without thinking, he reached for her wrist, stopping her. Their eyes met for the first time up close. Something unspoken passed between them. Grief, recognizing grief. He released her hand abruptly. "Go," he said. "I'll take care of this." But that night, when the house was silent again, he found himself replaying that look in his mind, the one that made him feel human again, against his will. A few evenings later, she wandered out into the garden after finishing her chores. The air smelled of wet earth and pine. She found a stone bench near the reflecting pool and sat there, her coat drawn tight, a cup of tea cooling in her hands. From the second-floor balcony, Ethan saw her through the glass. He didn't know why, but he walked downstairs. The house seemed to breathe differently when she was there, like it remembered it was meant to be lived in. He stepped outside. The gravel crunched under his shoes. She didn't turn around. "You shouldn't sit out here. It's cold," he said. "I'm fine. People who say that usually aren't." She smiled faintly. "You sound like someone who knows." He stood beside her but kept his distance. The garden lights shimmered against the pool, rippling over their faces. "You're not afraid of me," he said after a moment. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. "People who've lost everything don't have the luxury of fear." He froze. Those words exactly. Those had once been spoken by his mother, the night before she died. He could still see her on the terrace, smoking in her silk robe, her voice soft but certain. "When you've buried enough dreams, Ethan, nothing left can scare you." He looked at Amara now, the same quiet strength in her gaze, the same storm beneath calm water. "How long have you been cleaning other people's messes?" he asked suddenly. "Long enough to know dirt always comes back," she said. He almost smiled. Almost. The wind stirred between them, carrying the faint scent of rain again. He wanted to say something, thank her maybe, or ask her why she looked so familiar to a part of him he'd forgotten, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he said, "You can use the guest library, if you like to read." She blinked, caught off guard. "Are you giving me permission?" He hesitated. "I suppose I am." "Then I'll think about it," she said, standing up. "But only if you promise not to look over my shoulder." "I don't make promises," he murmured. "Maybe that's why people stop believing in you." She walked away, her footsteps fading toward the kitchen door, leaving him alone with a reflection of himself he didn't like. Inside, Amara paused at the threshold of the library. The room smelled of old paper and dust, untouched like everything else in this house. She ran her fingers along the spines of books lined in perfect order. When she reached a shelf near the window, one book caught her eye. "Letters to My Son." Opening it, she found a note inside, written in a woman's elegant cursive. "To whoever finds this, remember even the coldest glass can reflect warmth if someone dares to stand close enough." She smiled faintly, unaware that from the doorway, Ethan was watching her again silently. That night in his study, Ethan replayed the footage from his car again. He paused at the moment Amara shielded the little girl in the red coat. His niece. He exhaled. She still doesn't know. Downstairs, Amara locked up the library and turned off the lights. In the dark glass of the window, she caught her reflection beside his two figures, separated by distance, bound by something invisible. She whispered as if to herself, "Maybe some houses aren't haunted by ghosts, but by the people still living in them." Upstairs, Ethan looked at the same glass wall from the other side and thought, maybe she's right. That night, lightning split the sky. In the flash, the reflection on the window showed not two figures, but three. A woman's shadow lingered behind Ethan, gone as quickly as it appeared. He didn't see it, but Amara did. And for the first time, the house no longer felt empty. Morning headlines traveled faster than the winter wind. Billionaire Ethan Sterling hires South Side woman as live-in help. From street to mansion. Who is the woman behind the glass walls? The stories multiplied, each one colder than the last. Pictures of Amara taken without her consent while she was sweeping the front steps appeared online. People speculated, invented, mocked. At first, she ignored them. She had learned long ago that dignity wasn't something others could give. It was something you kept, even when the world tried to strip it away. But in the grocery store, whispers followed her. At the bus stop, stares burned into her skin. And at the mansion, silence became heavier. Ethan read every article, his jaw tight. He could have stopped it. A single statement from his PR team, and the rumors would die. But he didn't. Something fear maybe kept him frozen. He told himself it was to protect her privacy. The truth was uglier. He didn't want the world to see how much she mattered. Not yet. Not when he still didn't understand it himself. When Amara came into his office that evening, holding a tray of tea, he barely looked up. "There are reporters outside again," she said quietly. "I know. They think I'm sleeping with you." He flinched, then set his pen down. "Let them think what they want." She stared at him for a long moment. "It's easy for you to say. You don't live in my skin." Something cracked in his chest, but he couldn't find the right words. He never could. Amara turned to leave. "You can hide behind glass, Mr. Sterling. But I have to walk through it." That night, the mansion was quieter than usual. Rain tapped gently against the walls of glass. Amara wandered through the corridors restless. She passed his study. The door was ajar, light spilling through a sliver of space. On his desk sat a small velvet box, half open. Inside, a silver ring glinted under the lamplight. Curiosity tugged at her. She stepped closer. Engraved inside the band, Clara. Ethan's voice came from behind her. "She liked lilacs," he said softly. Amara froze. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't. It's fine." He walked past her, picked up the ring and turned it in his fingers. "She was my fiancée 3 years ago." Amara hesitated. "What happened?" He looked out the window. The city lights trembled in the reflection, fractured like memory. "There was an accident. I was driving. It was raining like tonight." His voice barely rose above a whisper. "I told her to wear the seatbelt. She laughed, said she trusted me." He laughed, once, a dry, bitter sound. Trust can be fatal, apparently. Amara's chest tightened. "You blame yourself." He glanced at her. "Wouldn't you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, seeing what no headline could describe, the small, silvery scar that cut across his wrist. A wound healed on the outside, still open underneath. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. He tensed, but didn't pull away. Her fingers were warm, steady. "Sometimes," she said softly, "a wound needs to be touched before it remembers how to close." The words hung there, fragile, dangerous. Ethan's breath caught. For a moment, the distance between them disappeared, and he could smell the faint trace of soap on her skin, the warmth of someone real. He stepped back first. "You should get some rest." Amara nodded, but her eyes lingered on his eyes that looked like they had forgotten sunlight. That night he dreamed of Clara again. But for the first time, she wasn't the one calling his name. It was Amara standing in the rain, her face blurred, whispering something he couldn't quite hear. When he reached for her, she vanished, leaving only the sound of breaking glass. He woke before dawn, breathless, his shirt damp with sweat. The city outside his window glowed pale blue. He poured himself water, then noticed the faint scent of lavender in the air, the same one Amara's soap carried. The scent made him restless. He walked downstairs. In the kitchen, Amara sat at the counter reading the newspaper with her elbows tucked in, like she was afraid to take up space. "You're awake early," she said, not looking up. "So are you." "Couldn't sleep." Because of the press. She folded the paper. Because of this house. It's too quiet. It makes you hear things you'd rather forget. He smiled faintly. You're not wrong. Amara studied him. He looked tired, older somehow. The sharpness in his face seemed dulled by something softer, vulnerability maybe. Do you ever think about leaving all this? She asked. All what? This she gestured vaguely around the marble kitchen. The glass. The money. The loneliness that pretends it's luxury. His gaze met hers. Every day. Then why don't you? He thought for a long time. Because it's the only thing I know how to control. Her smile was sad. You can control things. You just can't heal in them. Later that day, the butler informed Ethan that a group of shareholders wanted to discuss the recent distraction. Translation, they wanted the woman gone. At the meeting, one man smirked. You're a public figure, Ethan. People expect certain standards. Another added, if you need companionship, there are discreet ways. This situation is bad optics. Ethan said nothing. His hands stayed perfectly still on the table, but underneath, rage pulsed like electricity. When the meeting ended, he returned home and found Amara on the patio, hanging laundry to dry, even though there were machines for that. The sight disarmed him, so ordinary, so alive. Why do you stay? He asked suddenly. She looked up. Because I said I would. He stepped closer. People are talking. You don't owe me loyalty. She smiled faintly. Maybe not. But loyalty isn't something you owe, it's something you choose. The simplicity of it hit him like truth often does, quiet, but impossible to ignore. That night, a storm rolled through the city. Rain hit the glass walls in steady rhythms, like fingers drumming on guilt. Ethan stood by the window watching lightning split the sky. His reflection looked foreign, someone he didn't recognize wearing a life he no longer wanted. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. You're not sleeping either, Amara said. No. She came to stand beside him, arms crossed. I used to think storms were punishment, she said. Now I think they're just reminders that even the sky breaks sometimes. He glanced at her, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. Do you always talk like that? Only when I'm trying not to be scared. And now I'm trying not to care about being scared. For a moment, silence settled around them. The storm outside roared. Inside, something quieter took shape. Ethan turned to her. I wish I could start over, he said. With everything. With her. With you. She looked up at him, rainlight glinting off the glass between them. You can't start over, she said. But you can start different. And just like that, something inside him broke open. When Amara left the room, Ethan stayed by the window until dawn. He didn't see the world the same anymore. In the reflection, he noticed something that hadn't been there before, a small photograph tucked behind the frame. He reached out and pulled it free. It was of Clara. And next to her, a child he didn't recognize. A date was scribbled on the back, 2 weeks before the crash. His chest tightened. Why would Clara hide this here? Who was the child? He stared at the picture until the morning sun turned it gold, unease crawling through him. Upstairs, Amara hummed her song again, the one about light through cracks. And Ethan, still holding the photo, whispered to himself, maybe some cracks lead deeper than I thought. Outside, a black car idled near the gate, press photographers waiting for another scandal. But in the passenger seat sat someone else, a woman in dark sunglasses watching the mansion intently. On her wrist glimmered a ring identical to Clara's. She smiled faintly. So Ethan Sterling finally let someone in. Then she whispered to the driver, Let's see how long she lasts. The ballroom glittered like a frozen constellation. Chandeliers dripped with crystal, and violins sighed beneath the hush of wealth. Ethan Sterling stood among it all, impeccably dressed, perfectly unreadable, until his eyes found her. Amara. She was standing near the edge of the room, a glass of water trembling in her hand, wearing the simplest black dress, in a sea of silk and diamonds. She didn't belong here. Everyone could see it, and yet she held herself as though she did. It was Ethan's idea to bring her. He told himself it was gratitude she had organized the charity's new outreach program. But when he saw her walk in, his pulse betrayed him. It wasn't gratitude. It was something much harder to name. The whispers started before the speeches did. That's her. The one from the news. The maid. And then the blow landed. The chairwoman of the Sterling Foundation, a woman built entirely out of pearls. And disdain smiled thinly and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Mr. Sterling, you've outdone yourself." A maid at a gala. How progressive. A few guests tittered. Some looked away. Ethan's jaw tightened. But before he could speak, Amara turned to the woman and said softly, "Clean hands or white gloves. We both serve someone, don't we?" The laughter died. The orchestra stumbled on a note, and in that suspended silence, Ethan moved. He walked straight to Amara, ignoring the cameras, the board members, the investors whose money he could lose with one wrong step. He took her hand in his, steady, deliberate, and said, "She's not just here as my guest. She's the reason I still remember I have a heart." The world stopped. Then, chaos. The press lights exploded like fireworks, shutters, clicking questions hurled like stones. Are you together? Is she replacing Clara then? Is this a statement on race or redemption? Amara froze. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the marble floor. Ethan squeezed her hand once gently, as if saying, "I've got you." But she knew what the headlines would be tomorrow. By the time the gala ended, the internet was already on fire. That night, Amara sat on the edge of her bed in the guest wing of the mansion. Her phone buzzed endlessly, messages from reporters, friends she hadn't heard from in years. Strangers calling her names she didn't deserve. One headline burned into her mind, from maid to Mistress Ethan Sterling's scandalous new flame. Her stomach turned. She looked out the window. Beyond the garden, the city shimmered oblivious. When Ethan came to her door, she didn't turn. "Say something," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have done that. They were humiliating you. They humiliate me every day, Ethan. You just gave them a stage." He winced. "I wanted to protect you. You wanted to prove something. To them or to yourself, I don't know. But I can't be your proof." Her voice broke just slightly. "Do you know what happens to women like me when rich men make grand gestures? We pay the price. You get sympathy. I get crucified." He stepped closer. "Amara, please." She faced him, then, eyes glistening. "You think this is bravery, but it's not. It's guilt wearing a tuxedo." The words hit him like a slap. He tried to speak, but she was already walking away. Hours later, Ethan found himself wandering through the house. The air too still, the lights too bright. He poured a drink, but the whiskey burned his throat like punishment. On the piano, the newspaper from that morning still lay open, the old story about the mysterious child in Clara's photo. The face haunted him now, but not as much as the look Amara had given him, equal parts love and disappointment. He went to the glass wall by the staircase, the one she always cleaned first. For months he had watched her reflection move across its surface like sunlight. Now it reflected only him. For the first time he saw what she saw, a man trapped behind his own transparency. At dawn, he found the letter. It was on the kitchen counter, her handwriting looping softly across the paper. Ethan, thank you for seeing me when no one else did, but the world isn't ready to see us together, not yet, maybe not ever. You live in glass, I live in skin. Only one of those breaks quietly. Don't look for me, just remember what it felt like to be real, even for a moment. Amara, he read it 3 times, each line cutting deeper. By the 4th, he realized his hands were shaking. For the rest of the day, he didn't move from the window. The city outside blurred into rain, and for once, he didn't wipe the glass. His assistant called. His sister called. The board demanded a statement. He ignored them all. When night came, he stood in the same spot where Amara used to hum, where she once told him light was only beautiful through the cracks. Now there was no hum, only the echo of silence that sounded too much like regret. He pressed his palm against the cold glass, half expecting to feel her warmth on the other side. All he felt was the emptiness she'd left behind. Meanwhile, in a small apartment miles away, Amara folded her uniform neatly into a box. The walls around her were thin. She could hear her neighbors laughing, the distant sound of a baby crying. Real life, in all its chaos. She missed the quiet of the mansion, the scent of lilacs, the sound of rain against glass. But she also knew what that quiet had cost her. She glanced at her reflection in the mirror, tired eyes, steady heart. You did the right thing, she told herself. It didn't feel like truth yet. Outside, thunder rolled. She turned off the light. Back at the mansion, lightning flashed. Ethan, half drunk, wandered into his study. The photo of Clara and the unknown child still sat on the desk. He turned it over again, tracing the date on the back. The ink had smudged, but something else caught his eye, faint handwriting beneath the original note. For him. He doesn't know yet. A chill ran through him. What doesn't she know, he muttered. He stared at the photograph again. The child's eyes, wide, solemn, were unmistakably familiar. Too familiar. He sank into the chair, breath unsteady. If his suspicion was right, Clara had left behind more than grief. She had left behind a secret one that could shatter everything he thought he knew. He looked toward the empty hallway, the one that used to echo with Amara's footsteps. For a moment, he imagined her voice, calm, grounded, telling him to face what he feared. He whispered into the silence, I can't lose her too. Outside, the storm pressed against the glass, and for the first time, he didn't flinch. Because somewhere in that sound, in the crash of thunder and the breaking of rain, he could almost hear her voice again. You can't start over, Ethan, but you can start different. He didn't know what that meant yet, but he would find out, even if it meant following her into the storm. As Ethan finally drifted into uneasy sleep, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She's safe, but you're not the only one looking for her. Attached was a photo, Amara stepping out of a shelter, unaware of the shadowed figure watching her from across the street. Ethan's eyes snapped open. The glass between them might be gone, but something far darker was closing in. 3 months later, winter hung over Chicago like a sentence that refused to end. The Sterling mansion was dark now, the garden untended, the glass walls clouded by dust. Ethan hadn't left the house in weeks. He no longer attended meetings, no longer returned calls. The empire he had built, precise, invincible, began to crack quietly like ice under weight. He tried to tell himself it didn't matter, that the silence was peace, not punishment. But every reflection reminded him of her. Every pane of glass seemed to hold the shape of a woman who once hummed while she worked. The world still whispered about them, the billionaire and the maid, but the noise had faded. Only the emptiness remained. At night, he wandered from room to room, stopping by the window where she used to stand. Once he pressed his palm against the glass and left it there until his skin turned numb. She was right, he thought. Glass breaks quietly. Across the city, life went on. Amara tied her hair back and adjusted her blue volunteer badge. The community hospital where she worked was small, underfunded, but full of light, real light, not the kind trapped behind luxury glass. She moved between patients with steady grace, bandaging cuts, checking pulses, whispering encouragement to the frightened. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Every night before leaving, she looked at the city skyline through the narrow window above the ward. Somewhere beyond those lights, she knew he was watching the same sky, or maybe not watching anything at all. She missed him, but she had learned that love wasn't just staying. Sometimes, love was stepping back so someone could find themselves again. One night near closing, the ER doors burst open. The sirens wailed sharp, frantic. Paramedics rushed in, pushing a stretcher. Male, mid-30s, stab wound to the abdomen. Lost a lot of blood on scene. Amara's training took over. She grabbed gloves, cleared a path, and froze when she saw his face. Ethan. His shirt was soaked with blood, his skin pale as porcelain. For a second, the room tilted. Pressures dropping, someone shouted. Amara moved closer, her voice trembling but firm. "I've got him. Keep the line open." She pressed her hand against his wound, feeling the faint throb of his heartbeat under her palm. He was still there. Barely. "Ethan," she whispered, "you don't get to leave like this. Not again." His eyelids fluttered. His lips moved, forming her name, or maybe just a sound that wanted to be it. As the doctors worked around her, Amara leaned in, her voice a breath against his ear. "You don't have my forgiveness yet," she said, her tears falling onto his cheek. "So you don't get to die." Hours passed. The surgery lights dimmed. The monitors steadied. Amara sat beside his bed, her scrubs stained with blood that wasn't hers. She watched the rise and fall of his chest, each breath fragile, but real. The doctor came in quietly. "He'll make it," he said. "You saved him." Amara nodded, but her heart didn't ease. Saving his body wasn't the same as saving his soul. When Ethan opened his eyes again, the world was soft and blurred. The first thing he saw wasn't the ceiling or the machines. It was her. Amara asleep in a chair beside his bed, her head resting against her arm. Her hair had come loose, a few curls framing her face. She looked exhausted, beautiful, unreal. He tried to speak, but his throat burned. The sound was enough to wake her. She blinked, startled, then smiled, a small, trembling smile that broke something open inside him. "You came back," he whispered. She shook her head gently. "I never really left." Her hand found his, tentative at first, then sure. "You almost did," she said. "You almost left before I could decide if I wanted to forgive you." His voice cracked. "I didn't mean to." "I know," she said, cutting him off softly. "But you did. And now you're here. That has to mean something." He looked at her eyes wet. "It means I don't want to keep living in glass." "Then don't," she said simply. "Live where the light hits you instead." For the next few days she stayed. She told herself it was because the hospital was understaffed, that someone needed to monitor his vitals. But every time she left the room, her chest felt hollow. Ethan didn't talk much. But one night, as she checked his IV line, he said quietly, "I used to think love was ownership, that if you gave enough money, security, devotion, you'd never be left." Amara didn't look up. And now, he exhaled. "Now I know love is something you can lose. And maybe that's what makes it real." She smiled faintly. Loss has a way of teaching the heart how to listen. Silence lingered between them, soft, full alive. The next morning, sunlight poured through the hospital window, warm and golden. Ethan was sitting up now, pale but stronger. He was reading the newspaper, the first he'd touched in months. Back in the headlines, Amara teased. He shook his head. No, for once they're not about me. She glanced at the page. A small photo in the corner showed a local story. Community hospital expands women's shelter program. That's your work, he said. Isn't it? She shrugged. It's everyone's work. But something in his expression changed. Pride, admiration, maybe love. You've always built things that matter, he said. I only built things that looked like they did. Amara sat beside him. You can still change that. I don't know where to start. She met his eyes. With people, not profits. That night, she prepared to leave. You'll be discharged tomorrow, she said. He reached for her wrist, gentle but firm. Amara. She turned. Stay. Not as my nurse. Just stay. She hesitated. The last time she stayed, she lost herself. But now, looking at him, thinner, humbler human, she saw something different. I'll stay, she said softly, if you really want me here. His hand tightened around hers. I do. Her smile was quiet trembling. Then I'm already home. Outside, rain began to fall, not a storm this time, just a whisper of water against the glass. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel trapped behind it. He felt free. He turned to her, voice low. Amara, when I woke up, I thought I saw Clara. Just for a second. She was holding the hand of a child. Amara frowned. A dream. Maybe, or maybe not. He looked away, his expression distant. There's something I still don't understand. Something about that night. What night? The accident. Amara touched his arm. Then let's find out. Together. He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the rain sliding down the window, each drop carving a path through its own reflection, falling free. Outside the hospital, a woman in dark glasses waited beside a car, watching the window where Ethan's light still burned. When her driver asked if they should leave, she smiled faintly and said, Not yet. He's remembering. And when he does, I'll be there. The ring on her hand, the twin of Clara's, caught the last gleam of streetlight before the rain swallowed it whole. The first time Amara returned to the Sterling mansion, she didn't recognize it. The glass had been cleaned, but not polished to perfection. A thin veil of dust softened the edges of everything, making the light warmer, gentler. The house no longer gleamed like a museum. It breathed like a home. Ethan stood by the doorway, leaning on his cane, a quiet reminder of the night he almost didn't make it back. His smile was uncertain, boyish, almost. Welcome back, he said. Amara looked around. It feels different. He nodded. It should. Weeks passed like slow rain on a window, steady cleansing. Ethan insisted she not return as staff, but as a partner in something new, the Sterling Foundation for Human Dignity, a charitable project born from his guilt and her grace. You'll be the heart, he said. I'll just sign the checks. Amara laughed softly. You've never been just the money, Ethan. Maybe not, he said. But I'm learning I can be more than what I built. So she became his counselor, his compass, his reminder of what mattered beyond profit margins. They spent long hours drafting programs for shelters, scholarships for single mothers, clinics in neighborhoods the city had forgotten. Sometimes she would catch him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his gaze quiet, reverent, as if she were teaching him a language he'd once known, but forgotten how to speak. Their days found rhythm. Mornings began with burnt toast and laughter. Ethan, once incapable of boiling water without a spreadsheet, now woke early to cook breakfast, or at least try. Amara would enter the kitchen to find eggs too runny, coffee too strong, but the effort perfect in its imperfection. When she teased him, "You'd better stick to investments," he'd grin. This is an investment in us. He was learning that tenderness didn't weaken a man, it redefined him. Amara, in turn, learned to let herself rest. She no longer moved through rooms like someone afraid to touch anything. She lingered, left books open on the couch, flowers on the table. Slowly, she allowed herself to believe she wasn't a guest in someone else's life. She was part of it. One evening, they cooked together, or tried to. The kitchen smelled of garlic and laughter. Flour dusted Amara's hair, and Ethan's expensive shirt bore a proud stain of tomato sauce. When she leaned over the counter to reach for a pan, he caught her wrist gently. Their eyes met close, too close. The air between them shifted. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "You have no idea what you've done to this place." She smiled faintly. "Cleaned it." He shook his head. "No, you've made it human." The words lingered long after the sauce had cooled. That night, they sat in the living room. Lights, dim music, soft. The walls, once echo chambers of silence, now carried laughter, conversation, and the faint hum of life returning. On the wall hung new photographs, not of luxury or power, but of faces. Children from the hospital, women from the shelters. Amara standing among them, smiling. Ethan beside her, sleeves rolled up, hands ungloved, unguarded. Each image told a story of something mended, not just in the world, but between them. Amara traced one frame with her fingertips. "Do you ever miss the old life? The one where everything sparkled, but nothing shined?" He shook his head. "No, I don't." She turned to him. "Then what do you see when you look at this?" He looked at the photo, her mid-laugh sunlight caught in her curls. "I see proof that I didn't imagine you." They talked late into the night, about grief, about redemption, about what it means to forgive, not just others, but oneself. At one point, she asked quietly, "Ethan, if tomorrow you lost all of this again, the house, the company, the name, what would you have left?" He thought for a long moment, the kind of silence that feels like a prayer. Then he said simply. The word landed between them, small, unadorned, devastatingly sincere. Something inside her gave way. She hadn't cried in months, but now tears spilled silently down her cheeks. He reached out, thumb brushing one away, but she caught his hand halfway and pressed it to her heart. I needed to hear that, she whispered, not because I didn't know, but because I needed to believe it. In the weeks that followed, they settled into something resembling peace, fragile, precious, earned. They worked side by side, their rhythms intertwined. She led workshops at the Foundation's community center. He met with donors who were surprised to find a man who now talked more about compassion than capital. Sometimes, in quiet moments, she'd find him sitting by the window with a journal, the same man who once hid behind glass, now writing his thoughts freely onto paper. I never knew you wrote, she said one evening. I didn't, he replied. Not until you gave me something worth writing about. He handed her a page, half-finished sentences about lost love and the fear of being seen. At the bottom, one line, stood alone. Learning to love her was learning to live again. Amara folded the page carefully, her heart swelling with something that scared and soothed her at once. But peace, like glass, is fragile. One afternoon, while sorting through documents for the foundation, Amara found an envelope with no name, old yellowed, tucked between folders of corporate records. Inside was a photo she had seen once before, Clara, Ethan's late fiancé, and the mysterious child beside her. But now looking closer, Amara noticed something new, a bracelet on the child's wrist. Woven thread, red and blue, identical to one she had made for a patient at the hospital, a boy named Liam. Her stomach dropped. Liam's mother had died in an accident years ago. The boy was quiet, withdrawn, but kind, painfully familiar. She realized with a shock that the date on the back of the photo matched the hospital record. Clara's accident, Liam's birth. Her pulse raced. Could he be? That night when Ethan returned from a meeting, he found Amara sitting by the window, the photo in her hand. "What's this?" she asked softly. He froze. The color drained from his face. "Where did you find that?" "In your files." "Ethan, who is he?" He sank into a chair, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know," he said, but his voice trembled, betraying him. "Don't lie to me. I'm not," he whispered. "At least I didn't think I was." He hesitated, eyes dark with something like fear. "I thought the boy died with her. I thought—" He stopped. "Thought what?" "That it was my fault." Amara's voice softened. And if he didn't, Ethan looked up. The truth hovered between them like a ghost. "Then I've spent all these years mourning the wrong life." Outside, the wind rose, rattling the windows. The photo trembled in Amara's hand. Clara's smile frozen in time, the child's eyes eerily familiar. She looked at Ethan, voice barely a whisper. "Then we have to find him." He nodded, his hand reaching for hers. Together. And somewhere beyond the storm, a boy with the same gray eyes as Ethan's played alone in the dim light of a foster home, wearing a frayed red and blue bracelet, waiting for a story that hadn't yet found its ending. A letter arrived at the Sterling Foundation the next morning. No return address. Inside, a single line typed on plain paper. "You're not the only one looking for him." And beneath it, a fingerprint in red. The storm didn't begin with thunder. It began with a headline. "Sterling Holdings under investigation for fraud." By noon, it was everywhere. Television screens, news alerts, whispers on trading floors. The empire Ethan had rebuilt with trembling hands was collapsing again, not from greed this time, but from betrayal. A former partner had falsified numbers on a major charity investment. The papers didn't care who was guilty. They only needed a name to crucify. And Ethan Sterling's name was worth gold in scandal. He stood before his board, pale but steady, while the lawyers spoke in sharp, sterile tones. "Mr. Sterling, they're pinning this on you. You signed the documents." "I signed them in trust," he said quietly. "I didn't know." "It doesn't matter what you knew," one director interrupted. "You're the face of this company. If you fall, we all do." Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhaustion cutting deep lines into his face. "Then I'll take it." The room erupted. "Ethan, no." But he raised a hand, silencing them. "I built this company. If someone must stand in the storm, it should be me." He left the room before they could stop him, before they could see that behind his calm, his hands were shaking. At the foundation, Amara stared at the newsfeed on her phone, her heart pounding. She knew that look in his eyes, the self-destructive nobility, the need to pay debts. No one was asking him to pay anymore. She grabbed her coat. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed like vultures, flashbulbs, shouting, a blur of microphones and judgment. Ethan stepped out of the black car, in a dark suit, every inch the fallen titan. His lawyers flanked him, whispering strategy, but he wasn't listening. He had made up his mind. He would take the blame. He would protect his employees, his foundation, even if it meant destroying himself. When the questions hit him, "Did you falsify the documents? Is it true you laundered charity funds? Are you pleading guilty?" he said. Nothing. He'd already decided that silence would be his confession. Then a voice broke through the chaos. Clear, steady, familiar. "Don't you dare." Amara pushed through the crowd, her umbrella knocked aside by rain and elbows and cameras. Her eyes locked on him. "Ethan." He froze. She climbed the courthouse steps, drenched, breathless, but unafraid. "You don't get to destroy yourself to look noble," she said, her voice trembling. "Not this time." He looked at her, his composure cracking. "Amara, it's the only way. No." She shook her head fiercely. "You've spent half your life trying to atone for sins that weren't all yours. You don't owe the world your ruin. You owe it your truth." The reporters went silent. Cameras zoomed in. She stepped closer, her voice lower now, but every word a strike of lightning. "Do you think the people you're protecting want this? The ones you've helped, the children you've fed, do you think they need another fallen hero? No. They need you standing. They need you living." He stared at her, rain running down his face, mingling with the tears he refused to shed. "I can't let them tear it all apart. Then let them see who you really are." She turned toward the cameras. The man who built hope, not greed. The one who rebuilt lives, not empires. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause, the rain, the crowd, even the doubt. She wasn't just defending him. She was rewriting his story in front of the world. Later that night, footage of the scene flooded social media. The woman who stood by Sterling, love and integrity under fire. Within hours, the tide shifted. Former employees spoke out in support. Audit records revealed the truth, the fraud traced back to the former partner, not to Ethan. By morning, Sterling Holdings was cleared. The foundation's donors returned. And for the first time in months, Ethan saw something he had forgotten existed: mercy. But it wasn't relief that made his heart ache. It was her. He found Amara sitting on the courthouse steps, soaked to the bone, watching the sunrise push through the rain. He approached quietly, his shoes splashing through puddles. "You shouldn't be out here," he said softly. She turned to him, smiling faintly. "You shouldn't have tried to be a martyr." He laughed under his breath. "I didn't mean for you to save me again." "I didn't save you," she said. "You just remembered how to save yourself." The city around them was waking, lights flickering on life, moving forward. Ethan looked at her, really looked, the woman who had walked into his chaos and turned it into clarity. He dropped to one knee right there on the courthouse steps, where the storm had broken. Amara froze. "Ethan." He took a small box from his pocket. Not velvet, not gold, just simple and human. Inside, a single ring gleamed, its design, subtle, shaped like intertwined threads of silver and glass. He looked up at her, voice rough but steady. "Contract term lifetime. Value priceless. Position. Mrs. Sterling." The words hung in the air, echoing off stone and sky. Amara covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. Reporters, passers-by, even strangers who had once doubted them, stopped to watch. He continued, "I can't promise a perfect life, but I can promise an honest one. No walls, no glass. Just us, bruised, flawed, and still choosing each other." She laughed through her tears. "You're insane." He smiled. "So are you. That's why it works." And then she nodded. "Once, twice, yes." The applause began small, a few claps from the crowd, then grew into thunder. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling. She bent down, cupped his face, and kissed him, the kind of kiss that doesn't belong to fairy tales, but to people who have survived enough to deserve one. Behind them, the courthouse loomed, the symbol of judgment turned for a moment into a witness of grace. That evening, the news outlets replayed the moment on a loop. Not the scandal, not the trial, but the vow. Two people standing in the rain, choosing love over fear. Forgiveness over penance. In one photo that went viral, they were framed by the courthouse columns, rain cascading like glass shards around them. The caption read, "Sometimes storms don't destroy. They reveal." Later in the quiet of their home, Ethan traced her fingers where the ring caught the lamplight. "You know," he murmured, "I always imagined my life as a contract terms, conditions, guarantees." "And now?" she asked. "Now it feels like a promise I'm still learning how to keep." Amara smiled. "That's all love is, learning." They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of rain soft against the windows. But before the peace could settle, a knock echoed through the hall, slow, deliberate. Ethan frowned. "It's past midnight." Amara rose to answer, but when she opened the door, no one was there. Only an envelope on the doormat, wet from rain. She picked it up, unfolded the soaked paper. A single line was typed inside. "If you want the truth about the boy, meet me at the pier. Midnight tomorrow." Amara looked up at Ethan, her heart tightening. The storm, it seemed, wasn't done with them yet. Under the soft hum of rain, Ethan took her hand. "Whatever this is," he said, "we face it together." And as lightning flashed beyond the window, their reflections merged on the glass, no longer two people divided by past and guilt, but one promise, unbreakable. A year later, the city bloomed in spring, again, soft rain on steel sunlight, catching in the spaces between skyscrapers. Chicago had always been a place of glass and grit, and no one knew that balance better than Ethan Sterling and Amara Johnson. Today, they stood side by side at the entrance of the Sterling Amara Foundation, a sleek new building made not of mirrored panels, but of open windows that let the light pour in. Amara looked at the faces gathering before the stage, women of color, entrepreneurs, dreamers, single mothers, survivors. A year ago, many of them had been turned away from opportunity. Now they were here to celebrate their first step toward independence. For the first time in her life, Amara didn't feel like an outsider, looking in through the glass. She was home. Ethan adjusted the microphone, his cufflinks glinting faintly. Nervous, she whispered. He smiled sideways, terrified, which means, "I'm alive." The crowd hushed as he began to speak, his voice calm but weighted with memory carried across the hall. "A year ago, I thought success meant control, holding everything so tightly that nothing could break. But then one afternoon, a woman threw a rock through my car window." The audience laughed softly. Amara lowered her head, smiling cheeks warm. "That sound, the glass shattering, I thought it was loss. But now I know some cracks aren't meant to destroy. Some are meant to let the light in." He turned then, meeting Amara's gaze, a gaze that had once frightened him with its honesty. "That woman didn't just change my life. She reminded me that perfection isn't the goal. Compassion is. And that true strength isn't about walls. It's about windows." The room was silent, then applause. A wave of it. Not polite, not performative, real. Amara blinked fast, her throat tightening. She took his hand, fingers trembling. "You did it," she whispered. He squeezed back. "We did." After the ceremony, the crowd mingled laughter, mixing with clinking glasses and soft jazz. The new foundation office was alive, walls covered in portraits of women who had started small businesses through the program. Each photograph captured a story of survival, pride, and rebirth. Amara paused before one picture, a young mother named Kiara, standing in front of her bakery. The sign above the door read, "Sunrise Sweets." "She said the name was for us," Amara murmured. Ethan joined her hands in his pockets. "I can see why. You taught her what sunrise feels like." She looked at him amused. "And what about you?" He tilted his head. Me. You used to live behind glass walls, remember? Now you're helping others break theirs. He laughed quietly. Careful. You're turning me into a motivational quote. Maybe she teased, but you wear it well. Later, as the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, Ethan found her standing by the window, the largest pane of glass in the building. The skyline shimmered beyond, alive with motion. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Amara said softly, "You ever think about that day? The car?" He chuckled. "Every time I see a rock." "I was so scared," she said. "Not because I thought you'd hurt me, but because I thought I'd ruined my only chance at something better." Ethan turned to her, his expression tender. "You didn't ruin anything. You started it." She smiled, eyes glistening. Funny how something breaking can sound like something beginning. He reached for her hand, tracing the ring he'd placed there months ago. "You know," he said, "I used to believe love was about finding someone perfect. And now I know it's about finding someone brave enough to love what's imperfect in you, in themselves, in the world." Her breath caught. "That's beautiful." He shrugged lightly. "Must be the company I keep." When the guests had gone and the hall emptied, Amara lingered on the stage. The air still shimmered with laughter and light. She walked to the podium, running her hand across its surface, smooth, solid, real. She imagined her mother sitting in the crowd, smiling. She imagined the girl she used to be, angry, tired, throwing a stone in desperation, and wanted to tell her, "You didn't break something that day. You freed it." Ethan appeared behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "I have a surprise," he whispered. She turned, raising an eyebrow. "You know I hate surprises. This one's worth it." He led her outside to the courtyard. A sculpture stood there, draped in silk. "Go on," he said. Amara pulled the cover away and gasped. It was a tall glass installation, fractured but whole. The cracks filled with gold resin that caught the light like veins of sunlight. At its base, an inscription, "Through the breaks we shine brighter." She turned to him, voice trembling. "Ethan, this is us," he said simply. "Everything we broke, everything we built." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the quiet ache of gratitude. "You really think we're unbreakable?" He smiled. "No, I think we're breakable, and that's the point. We don't stay shattered." As dusk deepened, they sat by the fountain, the city lights reflecting in the water. Amara leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever wonder," she said softly, "if we'd still have found each other, if that rock had missed?" He laughed. "Knowing you, you'd have thrown another one." She grinned. "Probably." Then silence, the good kind, filled with the comfort of knowing they didn't need words anymore. When the first stars appeared, Ethan stood and offered her his hand. "Come on. One last thing." He led her back inside to the same window where she'd been standing earlier. The city stretched before them, alive, imperfect, beautiful. "Do you see it?" he asked. "The view?" "No," he said. "The cracks. Look closely." She squinted, faint lines etched across the glass from when the installers dropped one of the panels during construction, barely visible but there. "Most people would replace it," Ethan said. "But I asked them to leave it. Because every morning the sunlight catches right through that flaw, and it's the most beautiful part of the building." Amara turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "The broken part lets the light in." He nodded. "Always." As they stood there, the world outside bathed in gold. Amara felt peace, not the kind that comes from things being perfect, but the kind that comes when you finally stop trying to fix what was never wrong. She leaned into him, smiling through quiet tears. That window we broke. It wasn't just glass, was it? Ethan looked at her. No. It was the beginning of everything. True love doesn't make us perfect. It teaches us to see beauty in what's been broken. If you've ever been underestimated, rise. The world still needs the light that only you can bring. As the guests left and the lights dimmed, a small envelope sat on Amara's desk. No return address, just a child's drawing of a sun breaking through clouds. Inside, one line, written in careful handwriting, "Thank you for finding my dad." And beneath it, a name she hadn't seen before, Liam. Amara looked out through the golden cracks of the glass, her heart full, knowing some stories, even after ending, still find new ways to begin.